Happy snow day. This should be just kind of a short video. Just going to talk a little bit about what we want you to do before our next class meeting on Thursday. Mostly that's just working towards completing RA 0.5. And then also going through a tutorial where you'll be introduced to some basic Linux commands. So pretty soon in this course, we're going to be doing a lot of computations on HPC, on the cluster that you've learned to log into and move files onto and move files off of. And there are a few commands that cluster runs the Linux operating system. And there are a few commands in Linux that you can run from the terminal that just make it easier to work on a Linux machine. So we're going to learn about doing basic things in the tutorial today, like moving files, creating new folders, making copies of files, things like that. Just sort of basic things that you might inside of Windows or Mac OS do by clicking on things and moving them around in Windows or in Linux when we're working with a terminal. We're going to do those things by typing commands into the terminal. So either into the terminal that you pulled up on Mac OS, or if you're using Windows in MOBA Xterm. Turns out that if you like interacting with your computer this way, if you have a Mac, you can do the same things on your Mac. So the commands you're learning about that work in the Linux terminal also work in the Mac terminal, because both operating systems are actually based on the same, well, they're both based on Unix, and so they work pretty similarly. Okay, so I think I'll share my screen here, and then we'll start to talk about the tutorial, and then we'll take a quick look at the assignment for this too. Okay, let's see, look at this going. Let's see. Okay, all right, so you can see my screen now. And we're looking at our Moodle page for our class. And what I want you to do before the next class period is to work through a tutorial. This is not a tutorial that we've written. This is a tutorial that somebody else has written. And there's a link to the tutorial underneath this section of the Moodle page, tutorial and research assignments. If you go down, there's a link here that says Introduction to Unix Tutorial, RA 0.5, right? Because this is the stuff that's relevant to the RA 0.5 assignment that you're going to be working on a little bit later. So let's take a look at that. We're going to open this link, and it takes us to the software carpentry tutorial that you're going to go through today in class. So I want to show you a few really basic things in Linux and how to get started on this tutorial. So the first thing you should do before you even click on that link maybe is go ahead and log into HPC using your computer. So if you're on Windows, the way I think we've got things set up with MOBA Xterm, it really doesn't matter if you're on campus or if you're off campus. Today, you log into the HPC the same way. So go ahead and log into HPC. If you're on a Mac, remember it matters whether you're off campus or on campus. And remember that we created some aliases to log into HPC, and then also to access the file system on HPC. So I think the aliases were something like HPC if you're on campus, HPC off if you're off campus, and then I think it's HPC SSHFS, and then HPC SSHFS off if you're on campus versus off campus to set up that connection to the file system, and then be able to view the file system in Finder on your computer. So either way, get logged into HPC, and then if you're a Mac, take that extra step to get the file system connected to your computer. One of the things you need to do in this tutorial before you do anything else, after you've logged into HPC, is to actually download a folder. It's actually a zip file that you'll need for the tutorial, and you can access that just kind of near the top of the tutorial. Right? It says download files. Number 1 says download shell lesson data.zip. Okay. What the tutorial assumes is that you're actually working on your local computer, your laptop, in some sort of a shell, like a Linux shell, or on Mac OS. You're working in your terminal on Mac OS. The tutorial is not set up for somebody working remotely, logging into a remote computer like HPC. So there's some things that are going to be just a little bit different, especially in this top part of the tutorial because of that. So it says download this file and move it to your desktop. Instead of moving it to your desktop, I want you to download it and then move that file into your home directory on HPC. So if you're a Windows user, you can do that inside of MOBA Xterm. If you're a Mac user, you're going to do that in Finder after you've connected to the HPC file system using SSHFS. So you're basically doing what you did as part of RA 0.25 and uploading a file from your computer onto HPC. Okay, so do that with this file. Download it and then move it there. If you have trouble downloading this file and getting it up to HPC, I'm going to show you something a little bit later that will allow you to do that directly from the command line on HPC. But I'd prefer if you go through this process of downloading it locally and then uploading it like you did in RA 0.25, just so you get a little extra practice doing that. Okay, so I've already done this. I've already downloaded this file on my computer, so I'm not going to download it again. But anticipating what we're going to do a little bit later, this alternative way to get this file onto HPC, I am going to copy the download link to this file. Okay, so I'm just right-clicking, and then I'm going to go to copy link, and this looks pretty similar in Windows as well. Okay, so I'm just going to get that on my clipboard for later. Okay. Next part of the tutorial says install some software. All right, if you don't already have it installed, we're not going to do this. Right, so we're just using software that's already installed on HPC, so you don't have to worry about that. Open a new shell. All right, don't need to do that either. If you've logged into HPC, then you're looking at a shell. Okay. All right, so you can kind of skip that stuff because we're doing this remotely. Okay, let's look at the next part of the tutorial. Okay, this gives you a little bit of background and then starts taking you through some of the basics of working at the command line in Linux. Like I said, I'm going to show you a few really simple things, but we're going to rely on the tutorial to do the rest of this. Okay. All right, so at this point, I'm actually going to pull up a terminal window, and I'm already logged into HPC here. All right, so I'm already where you should be at this point as you're working on the tutorial. And just a few basic Linux commands to get us started. And then I'll show you how to decompress, unzip this file that you've downloaded now and you've uploaded to HPC. Okay, so when you log into HPC, it gives you some information about the computer you're logging into, including things like how long it's been up and running, things like that. So a bunch of information dumps onto your screen. If you want a nice, clean terminal, you can get rid of all that information pretty quickly. So for example, I'm going to list some things on the screen right? This is just listing some of the files in folders in my home directory. I've got a lot in there. You don't at this point, so this would look a lot simpler for you. But let's say I want to clean this up a little bit. There's a clear command. If I type that, it just gives me a nice fresh terminal window like this. Okay, it clears all the all the output from the previous commands and those commands. All right, so that's a nice kind of handy thing. All right, let's look at that ls command again. Okay, so if I type ls, that'll list the files, the contents, the directories that are in the directory I'm presently working in. So when you're working at the command line in Linux, you're working within a directory. So you've got some place that you're at in the file system. So in Windows or on Mac OS, you've got folders, like you've got a downloads folder, you've got a documents folder, you might have other folders that you've created within those. And so when you're working in Linux, you've got folders as well, just like you do in Mac OS or Windows. I mean, it's identical in that sense. But when you're working from the command line, you're sort of working from within one of those folders. And by default, when you log into a Linux machine like HPC, it puts you into your home directory, right? Which is kind of your personal folder where all your stuff is. Okay. You have a home directory on your Windows machine. You have a home directory on your Mac. All right, you got one in Linux. All right, that might be on your Mac or on your Windows machine, the folder that has your documents folder in it or has your downloads folder in it. Right, that's where we're starting in Linux, inside that home folder. Okay, there's a little hint here. If you can see my cursor on my terminal here, there's a little hint here that we're in our home folder. There's a little tilde there. Tilde is essentially shorthand in Linux for home, our home folder. That's a shortcut for our home folder. Okay. If you're ever sort of lost in your file system, you don't remember where you're at. Okay, nice handy command is pwd. Okay, short for present working directory. If I type pwd and then hit enter, okay, the result says /home/byurk, okay, which is the longer name for my home directory. So I've got a folder called byurk, that's my home directory, in this directory called home that lives on the HPC computer. If you were to type pwd, right, and you're inside of your home directory, you're going to see something like this, okay, /home/ whatever your username is, that's your home directory. So my home directory and your home directory live next to each other in this directory called home. Okay, so that's where we start out. pwd command allows us to confirm that that's where we're at. Okay, all right, so if I type the ls command, that's just going to show me all the files and folders that are in that directory. And in the tutorial, you're going to see different options for making the ls command a little bit more useful. So it'll differentiate between folders and files. It'll list the commands in a particular order, or the contents in a particular order, like putting the most recently modified things or created things up at the top, and organizing them that way. There's lots of options for many commands in Linux that allow you to kind of customize their behavior, and you'll see that in the tutorial for ls. All right, so within this directory, you can see I've got some files and folders. What I don't have in this directory is the file that you should have downloaded and up to your local computer and then uploaded to HPC. I'm going to get that in a different way than you. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do that now. This is kind of your backup plan if you can't get the file uploaded from your local computer to HPC, then you can do this. That's why I wanted to show you this. All right, so on most Linux systems, there's a command called wget. Okay, and wget The W, I think, just stands for web. Right? So this is a command that goes out to the web and gets things, downloads files. All right, so remember, a little bit earlier when we started looking at the tutorial, I copied the link to the zip file, right, that we need for this tutorial. So I've got that sitting on my clipboard, and I can paste that, okay, after the command wget. Okay, so I have wget and then the URL for that file. And if I run this now, okay, it should download the file. And note, if we look back up at what was listed when I ran the ls command, the contents of the file are listed alphabetically. Okay, and if you look over here, I've got R, right, an R folder, and then under that shell lesson data temp. Okay, that's an old version of this folder we're going to work with that I already have on my computer or in my home directory. But notice there's nothing called shell lesson data .zip. Okay, so if I run this wget command, it does some things. It has a little progress bar here, but it downloads so fast that I don't even see it fill up. And now if I type ls, notice that I've got the zip file here that wasn't there before. Okay. All right. So now, aside from having a bunch of extra stuff in it, my home directory should look like yours. It's got that shell lesson data zip file in it, and we're almost ready to go. Okay. So that shell lesson data.zip file is compressed. Okay, it's a single file. It's a compressed folder with a bunch of files inside of that folder. You're going to be working with that folder and the contents of that folder, of course, in the tutorial. So our next step is going to be to uncompress, unzip that folder so that we can actually use it. So on HPC, there's a nice command, unzip, okay, for unzipping a zip file. And if I type unzip, and then if I'm in my home directory and the thing that I want to unzip is in the same directory, then I just need to type the name of the zip file, and it'll find it in my home directory. When I use the command line in Linux, I can usually take advantage of tab completion. Okay, so I can type the beginning of the file that I'm trying to unzip and then hit tab. And what Linux will do is it'll fill in what it thinks the next part of the file name might be based on what I've already typed. So notice what it doesn't do, right? It fills in the rest of lesson data, right? Because I typed in shell. What it doesn't do is it doesn't fill in the .zip, and that's because there's two different ways that this file name or directory name might be completed from here. It might be completed as -temp or .zip, because I've got something like that in each of those in my directory. So I've got to tell it which one I want. So if I type a dot, that's probably enough for it to figure out that I want the .zip. So I hit tab, and it'll finish that. Okay, I recommend using tab completion whenever you can. One advantage is that if you let something tab complete, you know you're not making any spelling errors or anything like that as you're writing it in. So we unzip shell lesson data.zip. Okay, you can see it's decompressing that folder and its contents. And now if I type ls again, okay, type ls again, you can see I've got the shell lesson data that wasn't there before. Okay, all right, so let's take a look at that directory. And one way I can do that is by moving from my home directory into that shell lesson data directory that I just decompressed. And the command that we use to move around between directories in Linux is the cd command. So cd is short for change directory. So I'm going to change directory cd into shell lesson data, right? I'm going to let it autocomplete by tabbing. Okay, and now notice a couple things happened. Well, one thing happened that you can see. The prompt here, right? The command line changed. So now instead of just a tilde, right, like it looks up here, instead of just a tilde, which tells me I'm in the home directory. Okay, I've got a tilde and then a / shell lesson data, which tells me I'm in the shell lesson data directory, which is in my home directory. Again, I can confirm that by typing pwd, present working directory, and it tells me where I am, and with a little bit more detail, right? Filling in the tilde there with the path to my home directory. Okay. All right. So now I'm in the my shell lesson data directory where all the stuff is for the tutorial, and I can list the contents of that directory. Okay, and I can see there's a exercise data and North Pacific Gyre, two things in my directory. Those are both directories themselves, so I can like cd into the exercise data directory. Okay, and I can list what's in there, and I can see that there's some files and folders in here, including, for example, a file called numbers.txt. Okay, maybe I want to look at numbers.txt and see what's in there. Okay, really quick command for listing the contents of a file in Linux is the cat command. All right, so if I cat numbers.txt, or I'm using autocomplete again, I can see that that file is pretty simple. It's just got a few numbers in it, 10 to 19, 22, and 6. Okay. All right. So now suppose that I'm in this directory, right? This exercise data directory, in the shell lesson data directory that's in my home folder. Suppose I wanna go back into my home folder. All right, so there's a couple ways I might do that. Okay, one is to just say cd tilde, right? So which says change my directory back to tilde, my home directory. Okay, but the home directory is kind of special. It's your directory, right? It's where your stuff lives. And so by default, actually, if I just run the cd command, that's where it's going to want to take me. So if I type the cd command, right, and just run it, it's going to take me back to my home directory if I don't list a different directory that I want to go to. Okay. All right. So now I'm back in my home directory. I'm going to maybe show you one more thing with the cd command here. All right. So let's get back into that shell lesson data directory that we created. So I'm going to cd into that. Okay. Lesson data. Okay. Good. And then maybe I'll get back into that exercise data folder again. Okay. All right. So I'm back looking at the files and folders within that exercise data folder. And from here, let's say I didn't want to go all the way back up to my home directory, but I wanted to go back up into the shell lesson data directory. Okay, so that's one directory above where I currently am. Right, so I look at pwd again. Right, I'm in exercise data. Okay, one directory above the directory that one's in is called shell lesson data. If I want to get into that directory, right, there's another command or another kind of shortcut using cd. If I do cd space and then ... that means just go up a level from where I'm at right now. So if I type that, you can see I'm now back in shell lesson data, and I can pwd to confirm that. Okay. All right. So I think that's all I want to show you at the command line in Linux. The rest you're going to get from walking through the tutorial on your own. Okay, so let's take a look at that tutorial really quickly. Okay, the tutorial is organized into what it calls episodes, and we don't want you to do all of this. Okay, there's only a subset of this that we want you to do. If you want to learn a little bit more about Linux commands, it'll certainly make you a little bit more efficient to look at some of the other episodes. But what we're really interested in is for you just to work through everything in this tutorial up to and including episode 3, working with files and directories. Okay, so your job is to start at the beginning, realize that whenever it says something about using the shell lesson data folder on your desktop, All right, you've got to translate that into working on HPC instead. All right, the shell lesson data folder in your home directory on HPC. Okay, aside from that, you can basically just follow along and everything should work like it does in the tutorial. Okay, so go through number 1, okay, which walks you through kind of basic commands with the shell, taking a look at the shell, how it works. Okay, and then navigating files and directories. Okay, how do you move through the file system? You've already seen that a little bit. They might show you how to copy, I'm not sure, I don't remember. And then working with files and directories, number 3. Okay, so you'll create some files, move some files around, make some copies, all things that you need to be able to do to be effective this semester with HPC. Okay, all right, so that's what we want you to do. We want you to get that done before our next class meeting on Thursday. And then we want you to start working on RA 0.5. So I'm going to go back to our Moodle page for just a second here, and we'll take a quick look at RA 0.5. Okay, so remember, all the tutorials and research assignments are available at these links right here from our Moodle page. So RA 0.5, okay, follow the RA link. And then RA 0.5 is right here, simple Linux commands. Okay, so here's the assignment. This is all you need to do. As part of this, you're gonna, just like RA 0.25, as you're working in Linux, you're gonna take some screenshots and upload those in Moodle. Okay, looks like the note down here says you're gonna upload a total of 4 screenshots as you go. And basically what this is going to ask you to do, it's going to ask you to demonstrate that you can do some of the things that are introduced in the tutorial. Okay, first thing you need to do, right, is something you've already probably done, log into HPC. Okay, next thing you need to do, right, is use a Linux command to list the contents of this directory. Okay. You're listing the contents of one of my directories, right? One of the directories that's in my home folder, in a directory called WaterShare. Okay, that directory should be something that you can access from HPC. Okay, you'll take a screenshot of that, turn that in. Okay, and then you're going to use an appropriate Linux command to create a new directory in your home directory, not mine. You wouldn't be able to do that, but create one called RA005, right, for RA 0.5 with our kind of weird naming convention. So you're going to create that new directory in your home directory. Okay, then cd into that directory. Okay, and then use an appropriate Linux command to show the path of the present working directory. Right, I showed you that a couple times. And take a screenshot of that. Okay, so far so good. Then you're going to copy a file from my WaterShare directory to the directory that you just created. Okay, so you'll learn in the tutorial how to copy a file. And again, you should have the appropriate access to do that. If you run into problems with permissions, like it won't let you do it because it's my file, let me know so I can open that up. I don't think you'll have a problem though. Okay. Then you're going to list the contents of the directory, take a screenshot of that. Okay. Finally, you're going to show the contents of that file, take a screenshot, upload that. Okay. So pretty straightforward RA 0.5. I think. Let us know if you've got any questions, but I know you can handle this. If you got problems connecting to HPC or anything like that, of course, talk to us about that as well. Okay, enjoy the rest of your snow day, and we'll see you on Thursday.